So Cristiano Ronaldo has 244 million followers on Instagram. That's impressive. How does he do that, I wonder? But anyway, thank you for being one of the three or four people who listen to me week by week, and or maybe you're new. Maybe I've got five now. But anyway, thank you for following as far as you do, and even if it's only for today, you're most welcome. And I'd like to think about this thought that there has never been so much following on planet Earth by human beings as there is today. It's epic. It's a whole industry, the following industry. It requires some voices on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, however, and it requires followers. And those who speak will have some basis for their appeal. I'm not quite sure what it is in each case of the very famous ones, and it raises for me a question. How do people select? What makes, for example, Ronaldo's opinion on something so worth hearing compared to other voices? I don't follow Ronaldo, so I don't know, and I'm certainly not commenting on his Instagram. What I'm saying is this: we need to make sure that we discern the difference between somebody who has great appeal and captures our attention and somebody to whom our attention is worth giving and worth paying attention to. There's a Christmas song around. There are always plenty of Christmas songs right now, and the one that's on my mind at the moment, because I've recently learned that after years in circulation, popular always, it is currently in the UK the very most popular, and that is All I Want for Christmas Is You. So I'm wondering, why now is this one suddenly surfaced as the top one? I think it might be because of coronavirus and a year of separation and isolation, in which the message, I want something, which is people, I want connection with love, material things that we may give an exchange at Christmas, maybe whatever they are, but actually what I want is the people I love. That's what matters most. And I think it's a great message. Well, long before Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, there was voice recognition, messaging, and following. It's been around for millions of years. Visit any seabird colony and you'll hear any amount of noise. There's a whole jumble of noise which you might find confusing. But the seabirds are not confused. They're simply using voice recognition to find each other, individual to individual. That's what they're looking for. And human beings are actually quite good. You'll pick out family and friends' voices in a crowded room or in a big open space. You'll just hear it and you'll go, I know who that is. So voice recognition technology is impressive, but actually biologically we've been doing it for millennia after millennia, and lots of species do it. Very famously, sheep do it. And that's what lies behind this image through the Bible of God as our shepherd and Jesus as the voice of God, the good shepherd who has come to us. And we'll have a look, if you don't mind, at that part of John chapter 10 where Jesus describes himself as the good shepherd. Let's go back a little bit further first. 2,500 years from now ago-ish, social media basically meant writing it down so others could read it and it wouldn't get lost. And here's one from that time, Psalm 95 verse 6. Come, let us bow down in worship. It's a great Christmas message. Come, let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. There it is, the image of shepherd applied to God. From the same era, very famously, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. The picture there is that God watches over us very much as did the shepherds who watched their flocks by night all seated on the ground at the time when Jesus was born. That God can be thought of in many ways, and shepherd is one way. It wasn't the shepherds, however, who pointed this out about Jesus. It was Matthew's mysterious migrant magi. We may call them the three wise men, the three kings, whoever, who came from, we're not sure where, in search of the Christ who had been born. And when they were making local inquiries, the prophecy from Micah was quoted that said, well, it's a descendant of David, so you need to go to Bethlehem. That's David, their ancient king, was the kind of folklore greatest of all kings. And he had been a shepherd originally outside of Bethlehem, but he'd given that up for a more colourful life that eventually led to him being on the throne of Israel and building a huge and strong kingdom. So David is the key person lying in the background, and to whom had come a promise that one of his descendants, therefore from Bethlehem in some sense, would be the chosen great leader, the voice of God for all people to follow, the shepherd of the people. And so that they're directed, the Magi, to Bethlehem, a city very familiar with shepherds in the ordinary sense of it. And Jesus is not only seen in the Bible, by the way, as shepherd. There are many sides to Jesus. And so he's also the lamb, the shepherd, and with one hat on, as it were, but then in the next moment, the lamb, and then in the next moment, the lion. And what lions did around Bethlehem in those days was eat sheep, amongst other things. So the shepherd's job description at the time of Christ, as it had been for hundreds of years around Bethlehem, was to deal with lions, leopards, bears, wolves, and thieves. Well, the scene has changed quite a lot now. Lions and leopards and bears didn't survive the 20th century in Israel, and wolves barely. There's just a handful around at the moment in Israel, but you won't locate them around Bethlehem. What's still present, of course, are the thieves that shepherds had to guard their flocks by night, because it's by night that the big predators would come, and it's by night that the thief would come. These days the thieves are more interested in the land than the sheep that graze the land, but they at least are still around. And a key item in a shepherd's care of the sheep, and it must apply very significantly by night when you're all seated on the ground watching over your flocks, is voice recognition. And so Jesus picks this up, as we have it in John 10, years later, in the closing period of his ministry, as we have it in John chapter 10. And Jesus says to people, you need to follow my voice, because I'm the good shepherd. There are lots of voices, but then there are lots of agendas. None of the other agendas are going to see you through what I'll see you through. You can follow them, but when the stuff hits the fan, they're going to melt out of sight. I will lay down my life for you. Follow my voice, because I will walk into the jaws of the grand predator, death itself, because of my commitment to you. But none of the other voices that you may pay attention to are going to do that for you. The cross proves Bethlehem. It is the Good Shepherd who is born and placed in the manger, celebrated at Christmas time. Years ago, when we were on holiday in the Pyrenees, we stopped at a cafe for some coffee, and the next table to us was sat outside on a sort of balcony type thing, were three shepherds. And this cafe, there was no housing inside, it was just a cafe set in the midst of the mountains. And The three shepherds were having their coffee and a few snacks and things, chatting away. And all around the cafe, as far as the eye could see almost, was this densely packed sheep gathering. When they'd finished, which was just before us, they got up, paid their bill, and left. Shook each other by the hand, and then each one walked off in a different direction, calling. And the dozens and dozens and dozens of sheep that were in the area looked up and started to move. And they separated, this mass of sheep separated into three streams, each following the shepherd's voice. It was something we would see actually outside of Bethlehem with shepherds many years later when we're on pilgrimage there, of sheep using voice recognition and shepherds using voice recognition to get the attention and to lead the sheep in the right way to safety. There are many calls for our attention, and there are seasonal voices as well. Christmas is full of the sounds of Christmas that produce that sort of Christmas spirit in us when we hear them. And many seasonal voices are asking you for your attention. And some of those voices are not seasonal. Some of those voices are right inside my head and your head. We picked up those messages in childhood. Some of them need correcting because they misinform us about who we are, what we're worth. They help us make mistakes in life. Most of the voices that we absorbed when young were there to help us, and so many of them are vital for our well-being. But we've picked up a lot of negative sounds, and sometimes years and years later, they're still busy in there and we're still hearing those voices. Time to recognize them as harmful and step away from them. There's lots of other voices and lots of hazards in the darkness of reality. You know, we're in the time of coronavirus. We're not going to kid ourselves that there aren't problems in the world. Climate change. We have political systems that are dividing rather than uniting people, an economic system in the world that's not really helping most of the world's population and is actually no longer fit for purpose if it ever was. But we seem stuck with these things. And we have voices urging us to leave them and voices urging us to preserve them. And what are we to do? Voices abound. There's never been so many voices, never been so much following. Following is intentional. Following Jesus, for example, isn't saying, well, I approve of Jesus. He's really good. In fact, I'm quite inspired by him on occasion. Following Jesus is much more intentional. If you don't follow intentionally, you will be left behind. It's not just approving, it's getting up, making the decisions to follow and getting on with stuff that goes with following Jesus. Hope and pray that this Christmas season, it's the voice of the Good Shepherd that you hear, because he's the one who lays down his life for his sheep. The others, nah, their motives are nowhere near as good. God bless you. Have a safe week, and I hope we'll be together again soon. God bless.